Welcome back to Kick and Crochet. Today I'm going to teach you a really fun technique. This one is not exactly a different stitch. It uses very basic stitches, but the technique can create a bunch of really fun patterns. So this is just one sample of a design that you can make. The technique is called intermeshing or interlocking crochet. It's also sometimes called double filet crochet, and it's worked by basically weaving these strands through each other. It only uses double crochet and chain stitches. And it's just really fun. So I'm going to show you how to do this technique, and then I'll show you how to do this zigzag pattern. So to get started, there are a few different ways to get started. I'm just going to show you one way. If you are interested in this technique, you can look up more ways, but this is the way that I usually start my projects when I do intermeshing crochet. So I'm going to start with, well, usually I would actually start with a foundation single crochet or foundation double crochet or whatever I want to. So in this one I'm going to start with a foundation single crochet. And if you are not familiar with foundation stitches, I posted a video a couple weeks ago that shows you how to do this, so you should go check that out, because they are great and useful and wonderful, and I sing their praises. Okay, so I'm just doing a small sample. I did 11 stitches. So now to set up to get ready to do the intermeshing crochet, I need to make like a foundation. So I'm going to start by chaining 2, and this is going to count as a single crochet and a chain 1 space. So I'm going to skip that first stitch and the next one. I'm going to single crochet in the stitch after that, and then chain 1. So this setup is kind of like for the moss stitch that we just learned a little bit ago. Single crochet, chain 1. But for this one we're going to start with an odd number of stitches. And end with a single crochet. And now I'm going to chain 3, and I'll explain why in a little bit, and then pull up a long loop. So now I'm not going to turn this around. I'm going to get my second color of yarn, and I'm going to join this to my first skipped stitch. So at the very beginning I had this counted as a chain 1 and a single crochet. So this stitch right here is the first stitch that I skipped from the row below. So I'm going to get this ready. You can attach this to your hook just with a regular slip knot or whatever. So now I'm going to attach this here, pull this through, and chain 3. So that's a double crochet. So for intermeshing or interlocking crochet, every row except this foundation row, each color will only ever work into its own color. But for the foundation row, I'm just getting set up. So, alright, so there's 2 types of stitches that you need to do for intermeshing or interlocking crochet for the basic design. The first one is the front double crochet, and the other one's the back double crochet. So I'll show you the back first. So I'm going to yarn over. Now I'm going to make sure that I work behind this chain. So I'm going to go behind it, but I'm not going to work in there. I'm going to work in this stitch below that was skipped. So this chain is in front. I worked behind it in the stitch on the row below. So I didn't actually work into this chain, and so then I'll chain 1. Every time you do a stitch in intermeshing crochet, it's going to be a double crochet and then a chain 1. Okay, so now a front double crochet, you're going to do it in front of this line. So I'll yarn over because it's a double crochet, insert my hook in this skipped stitch, and pull up a loop, and finish finish the double crochet, and then chain 1. So you can see this one is behind that chain and this one's in front of that chain. So I'll do another behind, working behind that chain in that skipped stitch from the row below. And once you finish your setup row, it's actually easier. So the setup row, in my opinion, is the hardest part. Because I have one more skipped stitch. I'm going to do that one in front. And now from this point till the very end of the project, this green is never going to work into a pink stitch, and the pink or purple or whatever color this is never going to work into a green stitch. So when you read a pattern that uses intermeshing, here, let me do my chain 3. It's always going to be a chain 3 to turn because we're always working in double crochet. So when I turn this around, I have 2 different colors of yarn attached to it. Always going to work the lower one first, but it matters whether I have this in front of the work or behind the work. So when you're doing a pattern, it will tell you whether you're going to have color B in front or color B behind. For this zigzag pattern that we're doing, the color B is always going to be in front. Okay, so then you will pick your original, your main color, your color A, whatever you want to call it, back up and put it back on your hook. So now, remember I have 2 options. I'm either going to do a front or a back. So I'm going to start with the front, and I will only work into the pink stitches on the bottom. So that chain 3 counts as the stitch for this one. So I'm not going to work in the chain, I'm going to work in that single crochet. Yarn over from the front. And then chain 1. I'm sorry, I said it was going to be a chain 3 on that turn. It's actually a chain 4 because it's a double crochet and a chain 1. Okay. So that's from the front, and then from the back, remember I've got a chain 1 in between each double crochet. So now from the back, I need to make sure this bar is in the front, and I go through the skipped stitch of my same color and chain 1. Now here's the front. And chain 1, and then again from the back, chain 1. And on your very edge, you don't have to worry about whether it's in the front or the back because there's nothing else there. Just make sure that you go in, you skip the chain 1 and go in where the top of the double crochet would be. Okay, then when you finish your main color, you don't turn the project around yet because you still have to finish this. So when I write patterns in this, I'll call it row 1A and 1B or 2A and 2B because there's 2 parts to the row before I can turn. So the green now is only going to work into the green stitches from the previous row and only into the tops of the double crochets. Don't go around the chain because that'll put your stitches in the wrong place. Make sure you're going in the tops of the double crochets. Now this one is kind of behind the works. It's a little harder to see, but you can still kind of see where they are. So because I'm working the zigzag pattern, I'm going to start with a back. Well, first let me do my other chain. So I'm going to do it from the back. So I'm going to go behind this pink bar and insert into that double crochet that's green. Yarn over and finish my double crochet, then chain 1. That was from the back. This one is going to be from the front. So I'm going to make sure this pink stays behind and do a double crochet in the top of this double crochet of green on the bottom, and then chain 1. Then again from the back, making sure I go behind this bar through the green double crochet, finish the double crochet and chain 1, and then from the front. So when you work into the turn chain, just to make sure you skip the chain 1 and work into the top of what would have been the double crochet. So you chain 4 when you turn, and that counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. 1, 2, 3, 4 for my turn chain. So you can already see this zigzag starting to appear. My green's going up, over, up. My pink's going up, over, right? So when I turn this around, my green comes in front. I'll do one more row of this. This technique can seem really confusing at first, so just be patient with yourself, and I encourage you to experiment with it because it can be really fun. Alright, for the zigzag pattern, the only real thing you need to keep in mind, if you don't remember, oh, I need to go in the back and then the front or whatever, is that if your main color is in the front on the row below when you're looking at it, then you want to go from the back. And if it was in the back, then you're going to go from the front. You're just going to alternate every time to make this zigzag pattern. Okay, so that was the main color, so I'm not turning it because I still have to do the contrast color. And again, because I'm zigzagging, I'm just going to alternate. So this is in the front right here, so I'm going to make sure it's in the back. And one thing to keep in mind when you're doing intermeshing or interwoven crochet is to make sure that these other color stitches end up in the right place. So every stitch should have an opposite color stitch between it. So here's my first stitch. My next one has to make sure it goes on this side of that other color stitch, not this side, because that will push this one over and it'll make your pattern wonky. So just make sure you don't put the other color stitches in the wrong place. So I'm going to start with a back double crochet and a chain one, and then a front double crochet and a chain one, then a back double crochet and a chain one, and a front double crochet and chain one. So I've got to skip the chain and work in what would be the top of the double crochet. And let's pretend that this is the end of my square, so that I'm gonna stop working with my contrast color. I'm just gonna tie it off. Now for this zigzag pattern, before I show you how to finish it, you can work in any combination of 4 stitches plus 3. That might sound kind of confusing. You actually can work in any number of odd stitches to do this pattern, but if you want to be able to leave it so that your contrast color always starts in the front, then you'll have to start in combinations of 4 stitches plus 3. If you don't mind having to alternate whether your contrast color starts in the front or in the back, then you can do 4 combinations of 4 stitches plus 1 for the zigzag pattern. As long as you keep in mind the principle that when you're working, if you are looking at the row below of the same color, if it was in the front, you're going to do it in the back. That's the basic principle for the zigzag stitch. So for this one I did, I think 23 stitches. It actually would have worked better with 25 because it was a little bit short. So you can play with that. Okay, so to finish this off, I just tied off the contrast color and I don't have to worry about that anymore. But I need to reconnect my fabrics because remember, this pink and this green are only actually connected at the very bottom. They're just woven through each other as I go. So to reconnect them, instead of a 4 turn chain, I'm going to do a 3 because I'm not going to have chains in between each stitch anymore. Instead, I'm going to work single crochets in the opposite color stitch. So I'm going to do a single crochet in that opposite color stitch. Now I'm going to do a front double crochet just like I normally would in my same color. I'm not going to chain. I'm going to do a single crochet in the opposite color stitch. Then I'll do a back. So I'm just doing the main color in pattern like I normally would. This is in the front, so I'm doing it in the back for the zigzag stitch. Then I'll do a single crochet in the top. And I'll do a front, single crochet in the top of this green, then a back, single crochet in the top of this green, again skipping the chain 1 and working in what would be the top of the chain of the double crochet. And then I have one last double crochet of my main color. And it's connected together. So these can't actually come apart because they're connected at the top of the bottom. Some techniques for intermeshing crochet will actually have you start with a chain of each color that are just woven around, so they're not actually ever connected, but I prefer to do it this way just because I think it is easier to start and to understand what you're doing. So that is that. If you'd like to make the square, like I said, this one was 23 stitches wide, and my back color always, my B color, my contrast color, always starts in the front of the work when I turn a row. If you needed to make it 25 stitches, then that would alternate. One row would start in front, the next row would start in back, but you can find more information about that on the blog with written instructions on how to do this. So that is the Zig Zag intermeshing or interlocking crochet. It's one of, like I said, one of the easiest intermeshing stitch patterns to learn, and there are so many things you can do with this technique once you learn how to do it. You can do it in rounds, you can do it using 3 colors, there's lots of options. If you're looking for another project that uses this, you can check out the cobblestone scarf, and the Zig Zag cowl is in the works. It's not actually available yet, but it uses this zigzag pattern for intermeshing crochet. So, happy crocheting, thanks for following, don't forget to subscribe so you get all the latest videos,